Mother-in-law drama of the century. She's accusing me of doing something that I would never do. And it's something very unholy. Well, I'm telling you guys, look me in the eyes. I didn't do it. Well, what is she accusing me of, you might ask? Well, I'll tell ya. Witchcraft. I guess you could say I'm the type of woman that is happily accommodated into modern society. I'm a free spirit. I have a loving husband who's 3 years older than me, so we share many similarities in what we like and what we dislike. Life's been great since the day we married 2 years ago, but there's been someone in my life that's been less than accommodating. You know how they say that most women have a hard time getting along with their mother-in-law? And I always thought this was some kind of urban legend, but well, it turns out to be true. My mother-in-law was problematic from the very first day I met her. We got married 1 year after we met, and I met her 2 months into my relationship with Luke. The problem was that from day one, she gave me this weird look just because I was wearing these crystals and beads around my neck that are part of my Nigerian culture. I remember distinctly how she looked at me from head to toe. That kind of look that somebody gives you when they feel superior to you. I tried to brush it off, but even on the day we got married, she came up to me while no one else was around and looked me in the eyes and said, "You better give my son the love and respect he deserves." Well, you don't need to tell me that. My parents live in a state far away from where I live with Luke, so we only see them every 6 months when we travel there. I'm almost glad they're not close to Luke's family because I could tell that my mother-in-law was always somewhat dismissive of my parents, just like she was just being polite to her son Luke. It turns out that Kiara, my mother-in-law, is the African-American part of Luke's family, so I don't know, I expected her to be on my side. The funny thing is that my father-in-law is the sweetest man, and he's never been anything but respectful of me. Kiara is a whole other deal, and I've yet to figure out why she is this way. So, it's been 2 years since we got married, and I see Luke's family at least once every 2 weeks. My interactions with his families are always good, but last week things turned out for the absolute worst. My mother sent me this beautiful necklace that belonged to my grandmother who lived her whole life in Nigeria, and also died there. It was a gorgeous necklace with many precious stones and beads. I just remember feeling so proud of it that I decided to wear it to the next gathering with Luke's family. It was going to be a birthday party for my father-in-law, and I was happy to be there to celebrate with him. The moment I arrived at the party with Luke, my sister-in-law, who, by the way, also happens to be a great person, hugged me and complimented me on the necklace. Then Luke's father came out and also gave me a big hug and mentioned how exotic my necklace was. We came in, and many of Luke's relatives that I have yet to meet also came to the party. Everyone was very nice, and it's been about 20 minutes and Kiara was nowhere to be seen. Luke even said, "Hey, where's Mom?" And his father replied, "She's out shopping for some extra snacks for the party with your aunt." So we went into the backyard and everyone was having a lot of fun. Then all of a sudden, my mother-in-law came in and gave Luke a big hug. She then walked towards me and I could see her eyes moving in the direction of my necklace. She stared at it as if she was walking towards me, and I swear that it felt like everything went into slow motion. This took me back to the day when I met her and she gave me the strange dismissive look, as she stared at my necklace back then. One that was less exotic than the one I was wearing today. She hugs me and whispers in my ear, "You come meet me in the kitchen in 10 minutes. I need to tell you something." So I waited exactly 10 minutes and just staring at my watch nervously. I went into the kitchen and I remember having a gut feeling that this was not going to be a good encounter. Sure enough, she was there and she was cutting some carrots to put them in a dish with some dip. She just kept cutting the carrots and wasn't even making eye contact. Suddenly, a member of the family that was invited to the party came into the kitchen, and Kiara said to me, "So, how do you like the party?" As if she was making some small talk and waiting for this person to leave. "Well, it's great." But I knew that she was waiting to pounce on me like a lion waits for its prey, just to be alone in the plains. So, we're finally alone in the kitchen. She stops cutting the carrots, raises her head, and takes a deep breath. Gives me her signature dismissive look and says these exact words. "I don't want you wearing this witchcraft accessory in my home." I remember being extremely annoyed but also insulted, but I wanted to remain calm, so I gently replied, "Hey, this is not witchcraft. This is a necklace my grandmother used to wear." I recognize this from some research I did. Please don't wear it again." And she basically stormed out of the kitchen with the carrot dish. This was the beginning of a nightmarish relationship with Kiara. I remember walking out of the kitchen and a woman about the same age as my mother-in-law came up to me and said, "Hang in there, honey. She's a difficult woman for all of us to have to handle." So, the next few months it felt as if Kiara had decided to turn against me and start doing everything she could to make me look like some evil jerk. One day, she came over to the house and went to the backyard by herself. Luke and I were in the living room, and we heard her screaming in the backyard, so we ran over to see what was wrong. She pointed at the floor and said, "Look, Luke, that's something used for witchcraft." She was pointing at this weird wooden stick with beads attached to it. I've never seen this before in my entire life, but she looked at me and said, "I warned you not to practice your black magic anymore." Well, I was furious at that point and I yelled, "Hey, I am not a witch. I don't practice witchcraft." Well, her reply was even more disturbing. She cried in a forceful way on Luke's shoulder like some kind of soap opera victim. "Look at how angry she is, Luke. If I was lying, why would she be upset?" I was shocked that she would say something like this, and I just walked out of the backyard and into the house. That night, I had a huge argument with Luke, and I asked him if he believed what his mother was saying. He told me that he did not want to take sides, but I asked him again if he believed I was doing any sort of witchcraft. He looked at me and he said, "I don't believe in any of that, but hey, if it upsets my mother, could you just stop?" I told him one more time that I don't do witchcraft and that I was never going to say that again. Needless to say, my mother-in-law made us fight and went to sleep upset at each other for the first time in our marriage, all because of her. I was really upset and I wanted this to stop, so I decided to wait a few days and called her up on the phone. So, I waited for Luke to be at work and I decided to call Kiara on her personal cell. She answered and I told her that she was wrong about me, that whatever it is she had found in the backyard was absolutely not mine. And then she didn't have to worry about me doing any witchcraft. After hearing me out for about 5 minutes, all she said was okay and then she hung up. I was already too frustrated with the situation and I had no idea how to handle it anymore. Her careless answer led me to believe that she simply did not want me in Luke's life. I was truly unable to do anything else at this point, and I just felt completely powerless to change things. A month later, she comes to the house and tells me and Luke that she needs to talk to the both of us. So, we sit in the living room and she takes out a photo of a necklace that looks similar to the one I was wearing at my father-in-law's birthday party. She holds the photo in her hand and says, "This necklace is from a witch in Nigeria that uses the necklace for her evil spells. It's just like yours, and I wanted to bring this to show you both so I would not be accused of lying or saying anything that is out of place." At this point, I was done. I got up and yelled, "That's it. I will not up with you insulting my family anymore. I will not be treated like some sort of evil person just because you saw some witch wearing a necklace that was worn by my grandmother for many years. She was a good woman and not some evil witch. Then I left the house and went for a walk with our dog. I circled the block several times until I saw her leave in her car, and I went back into the home. Luke felt bad for me and he apologized for his mother's behavior. He said that he had never seen her like this, and I felt bad for him because he did seem upset. Oh, he was definitely supportive of me, so I was happy about that. I remember that I did not hear from Kiara for a while. It was as if she was embarrassed for what she did, so I felt that this was the end of the problem. Oh boy, was I wrong. And I found myself in a completely different situation 1 month later. I came back home to find her and Luke in the living room, and she immediately looked at me and said, "I knew you were involved in something weird." She grabbed a red cloth from the living room table and opened it up to reveal some voodoo doll that had her photo on it and a bunch of needles stuck into it. "Well, what the heck is this, and why'd you bring it to my home?" She looked at me and said, "I did not bring this here, I found it in the backyard. Your backyard, right next to a plant when I was out here talking to Luke about something unrelated to you. I see you're not very careful, witch, because you left your cursed doll out in the open." Okay. At this point, I was absolutely furious that I hardly contained myself from hitting Kiara right in the face. I looked at Luke and said, "You better not even dare say you believe her." And Luke just said, "I have no idea what's going on here, but why would this doll be here?" Then I knew that my dear mother-in-law Kiara had done this. She probably made the doll herself and then brought it in to make me look like an evil, crazy witch. At this point, I really felt like I was the one at the end of my rope with Kiara. I knew that she was doing this, but I had no idea why. So, when she left the house that day and I yelled at Luke and cried all night for not believing me, I called her the next morning. I didn't want her to ignore my call, so I took Luke's phone, and when he was taking a shower, I called her. She answered after a couple of rings, and, well, I immediately said, "Why are you doing this to me?" "Ah, you're doing this to yourself." And then she hung up the phone on me. The next morning, I was out by the neighbor's house and I noticed that they had a camera that pointed in the direction of the wall next to our backyard. So I came up to their house and asked them if that camera was on all day, every day. Their initial reaction was to tell me that they never invaded our privacy and that only a small portion of the garden was captured by the camera. They told me they had it for security reasons in their backyard, and they had one for every wall on the perimeter. I told them I was not mad or anything like that. Instead, I wanted to know if they could give me footage from 2 days back at a very specific time of the day. They said that their cameras kept recording of the last 5 days before deleting them, so yes, they could show me the video. Well, I was hoping that their camera could have caught something in the backyard, and I looked at the footage and there was no one to be seen. But suddenly, Kiara made an appearance and she was alone. She had the voodoo doll in her hand, and I noticed the time and then saw as she moved out of the camera's reach, and, well, came back inside the house empty-handed. Then she came back out with Luke, and they both walked in the back for about 30 minutes, and she was holding that doll again. It was obvious at this point that she had planted the doll, which, duh, I already knew. But I had to be very careful with this. I told my neighbors that I needed a copy of the footage from that specific time frame. They gladly gave it to me. When I explained what was happening. To make matters worse, I heard from various family members of Luke's that she had been telling everyone that I was a witch, that I had been cursing her with voodoo. She was going to get great lengths to ruin my life, but I now had finally found something to put a stop to her. Update number 1. Well, now that I finally had something that I could show to Luke in order to expose Kiara, but I wasn't going to let this be a problem again. I was going to burn her, and I was going to take sweet revenge on her for doing this to me. But before I did this, I wanted to have a chat with that family member from the party that told me to hang in there. It turns out she was Kiara's cousin from their father's side. I told her that I wanted to talk to her and I invited her to have a cup of coffee with me. The things she revealed that day left me absolutely speechless, to say the least. She told me that Kiara had been a problem child and a very problematic teenager. She said that she would party and sleep around, but one day she fell in love with this man who was married and she learned witchcraft to put a spell on him and get him to be with her. Needless to say, this so-called witchcraft ended up not working. So she hired a witch from her neighborhood who was also Nigerian. The woman supposedly put a spell on this man and he was sick for many weeks and then died in the hospital. Given that Kiara was just 17 when this happened, she was not accused of anything. But the witch was sentenced to jail in her country of origin, so she was sent to Nigeria and was never heard from again. From that day on, Kiara hated anyone and anything that had anything to do with witchcraft. Then it all clicked in my head and I understood why she was so hateful towards me. Not only has she gotten a man killed, but she had also lied about me and planted fake evidence of my supposed witchcraft. This was a truly amazing moment for me and I was cherishing it without a doubt. I decided to invite as many members of the family over for a barbecue at my home. I was also going to decide to give Kiara one chance to back down and stop trying to ruin my life. If she agreed, I would drop the whole vengeance for the sake of the family. But if she declined my warning, I was going to go full force and expose her for what she really was. So, the day of the barbecue arrived and I've invited several of Luke's aunts, uncles, cousins, and of course his father. And the guest of honor, Kiara. I also invited her cousin, the one that told me everything about her past and gave me the weapons I needed to further expose her and her dirty little lies. When Kiara arrived, I told her I wanted to talk to her in private and she reluctantly agreed. We went into the guest room and I looked her in the eye and said, "Listen, Kiara, for the sake of my relationship with Luke's family and for the sake of Luke's happiness, I am willing to forget all that's happened if we can move on and at least pretend to like each other from this point on." She looked at me and said, "I don't like you. I never will. So I will not rest until Luke no longer wants you in his life." I took a deep breath, and I calmly said these exact words. "Well, I really hoped you would agree to move past this, but I guess it won't be happening. Are you sure?" "Oh, I'm very much sure, you dumb witch." Well, those words fueled my anger, and my thirst for revenge was now in full force. I took another deep breath, and I said to her, "I hope you don't end up regretting your decision," and I immediately walked out and rejoined the party. I had set up a DVD to play the video of her planting the doll in the living room, and I turned off the music and I told everyone to gather into the living room. For a moment, I had felt bad about doing this to Kiara, but after the little meeting we had in the guest room, I was completely ready to make her pay. Once everyone was gathered in the living room, I told them I needed to show them a very important video. One that was meant to be quite entertaining, so I pressed play on the DVD player and I felt a bit nervous when I realized what I was about to do. But I got a hold of myself and carried on. When the video showed my backyard, I said, "I want you to see how everything had been said about me lately by someone who is a big liar." And seconds after I said this, the whole video shows Kiara walking towards the garden with the voodoo doll in her hands. I immediately heard her say, "How dare you record me? You turn this off right now." Oh. Well, no, people need to see who you are. She ran up to the DVD player and grabbed it and smashed it to pieces in front of everyone. The whole room went silent as she did this, but I broke the silence by loudly saying, "Yeah, she's doing this because it shows her planting the voodoo doll in the backyard and saying that I had put a voodoo curse on her." I knew that the video did not show her hiding the doll, but she didn't know this. So she just stood there crying and yelling at me,
You are a witch, and you are a curse to this family."
Well, I was further fueled by her reaction and her words, and I said, "But that's not all. I know about your past and what you did to that poor married man when you were 17. Wow. When I said those words, she became enraged. How did you? Then she realized she was practically admitting what I was saying was true. What lies are you trying to spread about me? This was the moment when her cousin stepped up and said, "No, it's all true, and I have been keeping this secret for too long for you, Kiara." Kiara looked at her cousin and said in a rage, "Don't you dare do this to me." Kiara stormed out of the house and her husband followed her outside. The whole living room was engulfed in the most incredible silence you could ever imagine. I hugged Luke and said I'm sorry I had to do this, but someone had to stop your mother. Luke asked me, "What is it that she did?" I told him I would rather tell him alone, but he said he wanted the whole family to hear, so I sat down and told him everything I knew, and her cousin confirmed it all. As I told him what she had done in her teen, and her cousin told us she witnessed a lot of this, it was strange to see how the family was reacting in such shock, while others did not seem very surprised. This was definitely a very sad time for the family, and I was one that had to make it all happen. I was in many ways the sacrificial lamb that would end up being the bad guy in the eyes of many. One of Luke's sisters stood up and said, "How dare you do this in front of all of us?" Well, I said, "Hey, your mother is the one who wanted to ruin my life, so why am I the bad person here for defending myself?" So she ran out and followed her mother and father into the car. I knew that this was definitely going to create a greater barrier between me and Luke's family. But at the end of the day, I had to protect my marriage above all things. Luke told everyone to just go home and asked them to please not make anything bigger out of this. Everyone left the house without saying a word. It was like everyone had been told to shut up and just walk out as quietly as possible. Once the house was empty, I felt a sigh of relief that it was finally over. But it had definitely been a very draining situation, I'll tell you that. I remember that night Luke just asked me to leave him alone. He said he was mad at me for the way I decided to go about handling all this, but he was also mad at his mother for what she's done to me. I asked him to forgive me for making it public, but I also told him this is a hand his mother forced me to play, and I had no idea how to handle this situation when she told me she was never going to stop until I was out of his life. Luke went to the living room to watch TV and slept on the couch. I gave him his space because I knew he was feeling bad, but I was truly hoping that he would eventually realize that this was not my fault at all. Update number 2. Days later, Luke and I have been talking about the whole situation, and I told him that I felt that things would never be the same again with her mother and her father. Luke agreed and told me that his father was very disappointed to find out that Kiara had done that dark deed. I was ready to move on and hope that Kiara would at least stop being such a terrible person to me. But then Luke got a call from his sister and he said, "Log into Facebook. My sister said she sent us a video we need to see." We log in, and it turns out someone at the party recorded the part of the incident of her smashing the DVD player and posted it online. It was her cousin, the one that had told me everything and confronted her at the party. This was not something I had planned, and I felt this was a serious punishment that led her to be seen as a terrible person in the eyes of more family members. And some of them even posted a comment in the video saying things like, "This is the real Kiara," and, "Well, I knew she would reveal her true colors one day." I honestly felt bad for her, for a bit, for once. But then I remembered what she wanted to do to me and how she wanted to ruin my relationship with Luke. This was a bitter woman with a dark past, and it finally caught up with her. She did this to herself, and
there's no reason for me to feel bad about her. Update number 3. This is the final post by OP. Given the fact that the stigma of witchcraft is strong in Nigerian culture, Kiara was definitely feeling this even more now that her relationship with this Nigerian witch was revealed. Now the whole family had heard about what she had done to that man decades ago. She was forever going to be seen as a vindictive and horrible lady who wanted to steal a married man from his family and ended up being involved in his death. To make matters worse, she was going to be seen as a liar who had treated me badly and even tried to sabotage my marriage just because the skeletons in her closet came out to hunt her. I guess it's impossible for all this to ever go away. We can all forget about Christmas dinners together and even having them close to us if we ever have children. I think that some scars can't ever heal, and this is surely the case with what happened between Kiara and myself. I just hope that Luke can move on and he can see me with the same loving eyes he did before all of this happened. I know he's hurt and he has mixed feelings. On the other hand, Kiara is his mother and he loves her. And on the other hand, I'm his wife, and he knows that his mother is in the wrong. Now, all that's left is for us to recover that great relationship we have and try to get on with our lives. I feel terrible for Luke's father and for him to have discovered such a grim past was haunting his wife all along. I had to be the catalyst for all of her past traumas to come back, and she focused her hatred on me because of that. At the end of the day, it is survival of the fittest, and I needed to do what was in my power to ensure that my marriage could survive this evil woman. Unfortunately, I ended up creating a scar in Luke's heart that may never fully heal.
Guys, we're just going to jump right into some comments on this one because this mother-in-law was out of her rocker. Here's comment number 1. Wow, OP. This is an absolutely wild story. Your mother-in-law sounds like a real piece of work. I'm glad you're able to get security footage, though. It's time to show everyone what she's really up to. Best of luck dealing with her in the future. Here's update number 2, comment number 2. Dang, that's some next-level mother-in-law drama. It's good that you finally have some evidence to back up your side of the story. Ugh, good luck on this one. And then comment 3 says, it sounds like you've been through so much with your mother-in-law. It's a good thing you're able to get some solid evidence against her. Now you can show Luke and the rest of the family that, well, what she's really like. So guys, all these comments were at the original post, so I had to go back and read them, and boy, oh boy, they were so happy there was video evidence, because it made me realize without the neighbor's video evidence of this voodoo doll being planted, I don't think OP would have ever been believed that it was really the mother-in-law doing all this. Guys, drop your comments down below. Let's go ahead and discuss this in the comment section. I hope you guys enjoyed today's content, and if you want to support me, it's so simple. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel. Thank you once again, have an amazing day, and Mr. Redito will catch you in the next one. I'll see ya.